Let's wait for a few more minutes to have everybody join the group. Some people went to the other wrong place, and I'm putting them to this room. Wes is here.
Yes, I made it. Thanks, Tassie.
Sure. I think we have everybody moved here by now. Okay, everyone. Thank you so much for coming to the last presentation of this series. I'm very excited to introduce Dr. Rachel Greenspan, who graduated from UC Irvine in psychology and social behavior in 2018, and she did 2 years of postdoc at the University of Pennsylvania. We are so excited to welcome her to our school, and please join me to welcome Dr. Greenspan for today's presentation. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for the welcome. I'm excited to have the opportunity today to introduce myself to everybody in the School of Applied Sciences and share a little bit of my research. Let's see. Okay. A little bit of my background. I started my academic life here in the SEC. So I did my undergraduate at the University of Florida, where I received a bachelor's in psychology and criminology. After that, I moved across the country to California, where I received my master's in social ecology and my doctorate in psychology and social behavior, working with Elizabeth Loftus. And after that, I moved back across the country again to the University of Pennsylvania, where I spent 2 years at the Quattrone Center for the Fair Administration of Justice. I know officially Penn's mascot is a Quaker, but the Quaker they use is a little creepy and cartoonish. So here we have a goat, which is the unofficial mascot of Penn Law. So as you can see from my background, my research is very interdisciplinary. So I kind of think of myself somewhere in the middle of a Venn diagram between psychology, criminal justice, and the law. So sometimes my work goes very much in one of those directions, but usually I'm at my happiest and my research is at its best when it's being informed by all three of those disciplines. The factor that ties all of my work together is that I'm interested in studying human memory, and not how memory is accurate, but how our memories are inaccurate. So the process of memory distortion and memory errors. So a lot of my work researches how people can come to remember an event differently from what actually happened, or can come to remember events that never happened at all. And although you'll see in my talk today that I occasionally use secondary data, most of my research is characterized by primary data collection. So I design and conduct a lot of experiments and survey methods. So although you see from my talk, I'll be focusing mostly today on my work on eyewitness confidence and eyewitness identifications. I do also want to briefly talk about my work on misinformation. So when I first got into this area of the study of human memory, when I would explain to my friends and family what I did, I'd say, oh, I study misinformation, and that's when people get misleading information and it can affect their beliefs and their memories. Unfortunately for the world that we all live in today, misinformation has now become a part of our daily lexicon. It's something we see in the news all the time, and it's something that people from a lot of different disciplines are interested in. When I talk about misinformation, I'm usually talking about when somebody sees an event or reads a story, they're exposed to misleading information about that event, and then when their memories are tested, they often remember details from the misleading information instead of the accurate details from the event that they actually saw. So briefly, here are two different projects that I've done in the past, focusing on this idea of how misinformation affects memory. The first of these focuses on misinformation correction. So if we're exposed to misleading information, and then we later learn that that information is incorrect, what happens? Do we still rely on the misinformation, or is the effect of the misinformation eliminated? So I've conducted two lab studies where I have people be exposed to misinformation, and then I either give them a standard sort of IRB typical debriefing, or I give them a more extensive debriefing where I talk about how misinformation works, specific details of the misinformation they were exposed to, and process information of how misinformation is incorporated into memory. And what I found is that this more enhanced debriefing is actually very successful at eliminating the continued influence of misinformation over time in a way that standard debriefings are not. Another area that I'm really interested in is the formation of natural false memories and whether some people are more susceptible to false memories and misinformation than others. So with some colleagues from UC Irvine, I was a part of a really unique study that followed a group of people longitudinally throughout the 2016 presidential election. So we first recruited MTurk workers during the primary process in the spring of 2016. Then we followed up with those same people pre-election, so late October of 2016. And then we followed up with them again directly before the inauguration in January. And at each of these time points, we asked participants about their feelings and emotions towards each of the candidates, and also about their memories. So how did their memory of their feelings and emotions change over time? And what we found is that, let's say somebody was a Democratic participant who supported Sanders in the primary, but then by the time the election came around, Clinton was the nominee. Not only do they feel more positive towards Clinton, they remembered that they always felt that way. They falsely remember that their feelings were more positive than they actually were, demonstrating both how false memories form over time and how these memories are generally in line with people's pre-existing beliefs and attitudes. So I hope those two examples give you a little bit of an idea of my overall body of work, that I study misinformation, a lot of different methodological approaches, and in many different domains. But for the main focus of my talk today, I want to talk about specifically memory errors in the legal system. And memory pervades the criminal justice system. So when jurors are deliberating, they're basing those deliberations on their memory of the evidence presented at trial. When an alibi witness testifies, they're talking about their memory for when they saw the defendant in a particular place at a particular time. And of course, we have eyewitness identifications, a witness testifying that they saw the defendant as the person who committed the crime. Here, I'm showing you some data from the National Registry of Exonerations. So this is a graph of all people who have been wrongfully convicted since the late 80s based on mistaken identification evidence. And this graph represents over 750 people that were wrongfully convicted of crimes that they never did. And in total, it represents nearly 9,000 years of false imprisonment. So clearly, memory errors are not only common, they're also very consequential. So then the question becomes, what do we do about this problem? Well, just a few months ago, the American Psychology Law Society published a scientific review paper reviewing the decades of existing research regarding eyewitness evidence and making 9 specific recommendations for law enforcement about best practices. So these include things like video recording the lineup and making sure that the lineup administrator doesn't provide suggestive cues about who the suspect is. And this is a really excellent paper, making really important, concrete recommendations for law enforcement. But it doesn't answer one key question, and that is, if I'm a police officer and my witness identifies person number 1 from a lineup, is that witness likely to be correct or likely to be mistaken? While these procedures overall reduce mistaken identifications, they don't answer that specific question, helping to discriminate on the ground between accurate and inaccurate witnesses. Luckily, we do know one factor that can help with this, and that is eyewitness confidence. So the relationship between confidence and accuracy is a little convoluted, but I'm going to lay it out here because it forms the foundation of the rest of my work. So in general, if a witness expresses low confidence, that should always be a red flag for accuracy. If I pick person number 2 from the lineup and I say, I think that's the guy, that should always be a concern for law enforcement that may be a mistaken identification. On the other hand, if a witness expresses high confidence, the relationship between confidence and accuracy is more complicated. So if the lineup is biased, and by that I mean that the lineup is unfair or suggestive questioning was used, then we don't know if confidence is related to accuracy. And the reason for that is we don't know if the witness is expressing high confidence because of the suggestive procedures or because they actually have a strong memory. On the other hand, if the lineup is unbiased, so there's no suggestive procedures and the lineup is fair, then there's a strong confidence accuracy relationship. If I pick person number 6 from the lineup and I say, that's him, never forget his face, then police know that that is a strong positive identification. So this is great. Research that helps at the ground level in determining whether a witness is accurate or not. And this topic fits really nicely in my sort of Venn diagram, takes a little bit of psychology, a little bit of criminal justice, and a little bit of law. And a lot of my questions about eyewitness confidence are driven by this disconnect between scientists and practitioners. So if we know that this research is here and it's helpful, to what extent is it actually translated into police practice? And so for my first study in this area, I asked a pretty simple question, and that is, do law enforcement agencies actually ask for and document confidence after a lineup? So to explore this question, I used secondary data analysis of a national survey of law enforcement agencies that was originally conducted by the Police Executive Research Forum. So this is a national random sampling, so the results here are representative of the overall US population of law enforcement. So what's the answer to our question? Do law enforcement agencies actually document confidence in the field? Turns out the answer is most of the time. 76% of agencies do so. So that's not fantastic. It's also not terrible. But I think the more important question here is, are there identifiable factors in which agencies document confidence and which do not? If we want to better translate science to the field, maybe there's particular kinds of agencies we should be focusing on. The first of these factors I looked at was agency size. So agency size was defined by the number of sworn officers. Agencies in the lowest quartile were small, agencies in the middle 2 quartile were medium, agencies in the largest quartile were large. And we see that agency size matters. So only about 60% of small agencies document confidence compared to nearly 80% of medium and large size agencies. And I will note that in this study, we looked at different kinds of best practice procedures, and this same pattern emerged, such that small agencies were significantly less likely to use evidence-based procedures than medium and large size agencies. So this is again showing that perhaps there's something going on with small agencies, more training may be needed, or they may receive less information about evidence-based procedures. The other factor that I looked at in this study was agency location, but that emerged as less probative information. So we didn't find any relationship between the agencies that documented confidence and the region that they were in. So far I've talked about why confidence is important, the relationship between confidence and accuracy, whether agencies actually document confidence, but I haven't really talked about what a confidence statement looks like. And there's 2 main kinds of confidence statements. One is verbal. So this is when officers ask a witness, in your own words, how confident are you? And you get all sorts of responses when you ask the confidence question this way. Some people are really brief. Yeah, I'm pretty sure. Some people are very long-winded. Yeah, I think I got the guy, his nose was kind of weird, so it stood out. So I don't think it could have meant many other people. So yeah, I think I got him. On the other hand, we have numeric confidence. So this is when officers ask witnesses on a scale from 0 to 100% or on a scale from 1 to 10, how confident are you? And here, witnesses will just say, I'm 95% confident, or I'm a 10 out of 10. And again, in this area, we see a disconnect between scientists and practitioners. So nearly all of the published research in this field uses numeric expressions of confidence. And this is because numeric data is a heck of a lot easier to work with in data analysis than verbal confidence is. But nearly all law enforcement agencies use verbal confidence. Almost no one uses numeric. And the reason for this is that from the perspective of police and prosecutors, unless a witness says 100% or 10 out of 10, it is very easy to find reasonable doubt. Verbal confidence is inherently more ambiguous. If someone says, I'm pretty sure, does that mean 70%? Does that mean 90%? It's not entirely clear, and so it may be more beneficial when you're trying to construct a strong case. But the downside of this is that if verbal confidence is ambiguous, it's going to be difficult for observers to tell if a witness is expressing high confidence or low confidence, and this may impair investigators' ability to accurately distinguish between accurate and inaccurate witnesses. So in a series of studies, I explored this question of whether people understand freely reported verbal confidence statements. So is there a common understanding of what witnesses mean when they explain their confidence in their own words? If we have two different officers listening to the same witness, are they going to come away with the same understanding of the strength of that witness's memory? So to conduct this study, I recruited participants on MTurk. I told them that we had previous participants do a study where they watched a mock crime video, made an identification from a lineup, and gave a confidence statement. And they were going to read some of these confidence statements. So here's an example. I am moderately confident in my identification. Participants read this statement and then were asked how confident they thought that this witness was on a scale from 0 to 100%. So if a participant thought that this witness who said they were moderately confident actually meant 75%, then they would slide the slider over to 75. The confidence phrases that we used in this study were pilot tested based on past research, such that most people believe that statements near the top of the scale reflect greater confidence than statements near the bottom of the scale. I'll also note that across my body of work in this area, I've read a lot of these verbal confidence statements. So the qualifiers that you see here, like somewhat, rather, and very, are common words that witnesses spontaneously use when asked to freely report their confidence. Okay, on to the results. What do we see? Well, we see some good things. So in general, people think that statements that reflect seemingly greater levels of confidence do indeed score higher on our numeric scale than statements near the bottom. But there's a few potential problems here. First, I'll draw your attention towards the top of this graph, and you'll see that people are really hesitant to use numbers at or near 100%. And more than that, various phrases like completely, extremely, and very aren't rated very differently from each other, only a few percentage points. And this is concerning because we want law enforcement to be able to use confidence as a cue to accuracy. But they're not going to be able to do that if they can't accurately distinguish when a witness is expressing high confidence or moderate confidence or low confidence. Finally, I'll draw your attention towards the bottom of the graph, and you'll also see that people are very hesitant to use the endpoint near 0%. And this provides some initial evidence that expressions of verbal confidence struggle to seemingly convey extremely high and extremely low levels of confidence in a way that's much easier to do using a predetermined numeric scale. The other important piece of data here is variability. So are people consistent in these readings? They are definitely not. So these error bars are plus or minus 1 standard deviation, and you can see here tremendous variability. So one person hearing a witness saying they're rather confident thinks that's 50%, and another thinks that's 85%. And so law enforcement officers aren't getting a common understanding of what witnesses mean when they express their confidence in this way. So if this research has shown that verbal confidence has problems because it's ambiguous and difficult to use as a cue to accuracy, and police and prosecutors don't like numeric confidence because it's easy to find reasonable doubt, maybe we can find some way to find a middle ground here, half verbal, half numeric. That middle ground is something called graded verbal confidence. So we can think of that as like a Likert scale. So there's a predetermined number of response options. Each of those response options has a verbal label. So that has the advantages of verbal confidence in that each option is labeled. It also has the advantages of numeric confidence in that it's clear that each point on the scale reflects a higher level of confidence than the one before it. The example you see here, how confident are you, uncertain, probable, or positive? This is a kind of graded verbal scale that's very commonly used in Pennsylvania. So to explore whether graded verbal confidence may be more comprehensible than verbal confidence, we recruited another sample of Amazon Mechanical Turk workers. We gave them the same kind of paradigm. We said, hey, we had done a past study. And this is what participants saw. So we used a 5-point graded verbal confidence scale. And one of the options was bubbled in. So our participants read that this was a confident statement given by a previous witness, and how confident do you think that this witness was? So if the participant thought that this person who selected moderately confident on this scale meant 50% confident, they would slide the slider over to 50. So do we see better results from graded verbal rather than freely reported confidence? Well, again, we see some good things, such that people are understanding that higher points on the scale reflect greater levels of confidence. But again, we see people really hesitant to assign values near the end of the numeric scale. So when somebody says that they're extremely confident, and extremely confident is literally the highest option they could possibly choose, the average ratings still don't get near 100%. And the same is true in the opposite direction for not at all confident. How about variability? Is there less variability in these scores? Not really. We still see a lot of variability in how people understand these graded verbal confidence statements. So there doesn't seem to be a common understanding of either freely reported verbal confidence or graded verbal confidence. Okay, so maybe there's another reason we want verbal confidence. So far, I've talked about the perspective of prosecutors and police and investigators, but what about the perspective of witnesses? Maybe witnesses feel that verbal confidence is their best chance to accurately explain their memory to police, and maybe we prefer it for that reason. So in that same study, we asked our participants, if they were a witness to a crime, which kind of confidence question would they prefer? Do they feel that numeric confidence, verbal confidence, or graded verbal confidence is their best way to accurately explain the strength of their memory? And we found that our participants overwhelmingly preferred numeric confidence. So about 70% of them said they would rather express their confidence numerically compared to verbally or using a graded verbal scale. And after they answered this question, we gave them a free response box and asked them to explain why they chose the option they did. And 3 main themes emerged for numeric confidence preference. The first of these was ease. So that's exemplified by this participant who says that they think it would be easier to pick a percentage of confidence versus using words. The second main theme is a topic I've discussed today, which is ambiguity. So people feel that it takes a lot of ambiguity away from the situation. Worded phrases could be interpreted in a number of different ways, but by using numbers, you can get across exactly how you feel. And the third main theme that our participants reported was accuracy. So the feeling that using a percentage or a number would allow them to be more accurate than they would be able to be using words. So what are my general takeaway points from this line of work that I've been conducting regarding eyewitness confidence? Well, the first is that there doesn't seem to be a common understanding of what verbal or graded verbal confidence statements mean. Two people could listen to the same witness and come away with very different understandings of the strength of that witness's memory. And that can really impair investigators because it takes away one of the only tools we know in determining whether a witness has made an accurate ID or not. As for which confidence method I think police should use, I'm not sure that that's the question I exactly want to focus on as my recommendation from this work. Rather, I think the takeaway point here is that law enforcement need to document a witness's confidence right after a lineup and document it verbatim. So it doesn't matter if the witness used numbers, or if they use their own words, or if they use a graded verbal scale. The confidence statement needs to be recorded exactly as the witness initially says. Because if a witness selects the top option on a graded verbal scale and police record that as 100%, those two things aren't the same. The witness who selects the top option may not mean they're 100% certain, and recording of confidence this way distorts the record. And although I don't have time today, in my dissertation, I conducted several studies showing how this rephrasing of confidence can impact witnesses' later memory and other legally relevant judgments. For my final few minutes today, I want to take a little bit of time to share with you some of my ongoing work and some projects I'm hoping to get started now that I'm here in Oxford. The first of these leans a little bit more towards the legal side of my Venn diagram. So with collaborators from the University of Pennsylvania and Duke University, we have compiled a list of all 1,156 law enforcement agencies in the state of Pennsylvania. Turns out that Pennsylvania has nearly 7% of all law enforcement agencies in this country. So using right to know requests, we have requested all of these agencies provide us with their eyewitness identification policies and their interrogation policies. Right now, as you can imagine, it is a bit of a bureaucratic mess to deal with, over 1,000 emails chains going back and forth, but we're doing pretty well. I think we have about 75% of the policies in. And once that's completed, we plan to code these policies for compliance with evidence-based practices. So this will answer a few questions. First, how many of these agencies actually have policies on these topics? Are the policies optimal? So are they consistent with what science recommends? And are there factors related to optimal policies? So we're going to look at things like agency size, agency location, and accreditation status. My next project is very much in the intersection between psychology and criminal justice, and that's focusing on different kinds of witness testimony in the justice system. Specifically, eyewitness versus alibi witnesses. So from a cognitive science perspective, these two forms of testimony are really quite similar. So an eyewitness says, I saw the defendant at this place at this time. And an alibi witness says, I saw the defendant at this place at this time. But we know that these two forms of memory evidence are not treated equally. So there are lots of anecdotal exoneration cases in which there is a single eyewitness that outweighs multiple exculpatory alibi witnesses. One reason this is often the case is this distinction between stranger and familiar identifications. So oftentimes, although not always, eyewitnesses are strangers, they don't know the defendant, and alibi witnesses are familiar, they're friends or family. And so last week, I submitted a grant pre-proposal to conduct several experiments exploring how jurors and prosecutor handle these two seemingly similar forms of memory evidence. And the final project that's in its very early stages focuses on a follow-up to something I mentioned at the beginning of my presentation, this question of misinformation correction. And there's two factors I'm interested in manipulating here. One is how people are exposed to misinformation. So we know these days that people aren't always exposed to misinformation by reading an article. They can also be exposed to misinformation by watching a video. And there's lots of basic memory research that shows that the additional auditory and visual stimuli of videos can result in different kinds of memory formation than reading that same information via text. And I want to look at two specific kinds of correction that are commonly used by social media companies today. You may be familiar with these from your daily life. The first is related articles correction. So this is something that Facebook uses, where if somebody on your feed shares an article that has misleading information, Facebook will provide underneath that a few additional verified links. So if it was for coronavirus, maybe linking to the CDC or the World Health Organization. Another kind of correction is warnings. So Facebook and Twitter both use this. If you go to click on a link that has misinformation, you'll get a pop-up that says, hey, our fact checkers have shown that this article contains misleading information. And so I want to explore whether these two forms of corrections are differentially effective and whether they're differentially effective across misinformation that is implanted via text or via video. So that's all I have for you guys today. I really appreciate you all taking a little bit of time out of your day to allow me to introduce myself and share some of my research with you. And I'm happy to answer any questions you may have about any of the projects I've talked about.
Hey, Rachel. Fascinating research. I'm curious if your grasp on the literature, or even something you might be thinking about going forward or engaged in, has scenarios where you vary some contextual factors around the vignette or the prompt, like the eyewitness. This was their identification when it was dark, right? Or there's poor lighting, or they were under the influence or something like that, and how that might affect people's perceptions of their confidence and accuracy.
Yeah, so that touches upon one of the more controversial areas in the eyewitness research right now, which is something called estimator variables. So that's exactly what you described. So lighting at the time of the crime or race of the victim and the witness. And there is a great deal of controversy right now about whether the presence of estimator variables affects the confidence accuracy relationship. I don't think that the research is sort of settled on that. The general idea of the paper that I cited regarding confidence and accuracy is that confidence and accuracy should have that relationship that I described, regardless of witnessing conditions. So generally what happens is if there's poor lighting, it makes people less likely to give a high confident identification. But if they give one, even under those circumstances, so long as the lineup is unbiased, it should still be related to accuracy.
Thank you.
Hey, great presentation. It's very exciting. I wanted to ask you whether you or anybody examine the person's memory in general. So outside of the context of witnessing, we can test someone's memory ability independent of the whatever they are witnessing. We can test whether this person is good at memorizing something or bad, and we can benchmark the person's ability to remember something or anything. Do you have that kind of study?
That's a really interesting question. I think it would be very difficult to construct, let's call it the how good are you at memory scale, because memory is so contextualized. How good at you are remembering information that you care about. I could list off the quarterbacks from Ole Miss, but I can't list off the quarterbacks from Mississippi State because I care about one and not the other. So I think it would be pretty difficult to construct that. Are you good at remembering text information? Are you good at remembering information that's presented via pictures? There may be, so I know there are some scales of like how good are you at remembering faces, but I don't know of any scales that just test sort of general memory abilities.
Yeah, well, what I was thinking about is if there's someone who is pretty bad at memory and has a good confidence, we may be able to detect these people who makes a wrong memory with a good confidence. And if we can test these people by examining their tendency to do this, this could be helpful. That was my thinking.
Yeah, so what work I do know of is actually the opposite. So there are some people who are really good at memory, and there's been work with those individuals. So law enforcement in England use some people who are really good, super recognizers at facial identification. But I don't know of research sort of in the opposite direction, people who are poor at memory.
Thank you.
Hey, Rachel, I had a question. It was less about the criminology side, although that's really interesting, and more about the methodology.
Yeah.
For a couple of your studies that you had used MTurk. So I've used MTurk for a couple things, and we've actually gotten some pushback from reviewers on using MTurk in terms of and I know that people have published some papers on, whether or not that's a reliable place for researchers to sample, and if it's, if we're just getting bots, and if people are not getting paid enough through that, like so some like human subjects concerns. Have you, what are your thoughts on utilizing that sampling and like recruitment procedure? Because I've gotten like mixed results.
Yeah, so I have a lot of thoughts. I'll try to be brief, and I'm happy to talk about it more extensively with you later, because this is something I have thought about a lot. MTurk works better for some things than for others. So there are some measures that everyone uses on MTurk. A bat and a ball together cost $1.10. The bat costs $1. How much does the ball cost? That people just know the answer to, so they're not effective. These kinds of studies tend to work better on MTurk because nobody else is doing them. It's not like somebody's seen this video 1,000 times or answered this personality measure 1,000 times. So that tends to work in our advantage. As for quality of responses, I use something called Turk Prime, which is a software program that works with MTurk, and it helps filter out those poor quality responses. I also use series of attention checks. That can be controversial, because if I want to make conclusions about how people remember crimes, some people don't pay attention when the crime's actually occurring. So you can filter out the bad responses, but that may bias your data in one way or another. There's all sorts of concerns with MTurk, but sort of a balance of concerns for me. So I try to use appropriate attention checks to filter out some people, but not too many. And Turk Prime is usually pretty good at getting rid of the bots.
Yeah, we've had once again, like I've used it before, and it's such a great way to get a sample quickly. Yeah. But yeah, I've had specific journals that have rejected studies, like DEST rejected them simply for that reason, that we used MTurk. So
I have had that happen too. I tend to know which journals those are, and I don't bother anymore. I think it's very discipline specific. So for instance, the study I mentioned about tracking people through the election, we thought that was a great study. We had longitudinal from primary to inauguration, and we got nailed by a reviewer for using MTurk. Just didn't even engage with the substance of the paper, just a long rant about how we should be ashamed of ourselves for using that sample. And that was more of a political science journal where the expectation was national random sampling. There is more of an acceptance of MTurk in psychology journals in particular, and in many criminal justice journals.
Yeah, well, thanks. That was great. Yeah, I was just curious if people use that in other fields. So
yeah.
Well, I have some questions. Well, hi, Rachel. Thank you for the great presentations. Welcome to Ole Miss too.
Thank you.
I'm Min-Soo Kang, and I'm a chair at Health, Exercise Science, Recreation Management, but also the director of Analytics Lab from School of Applied Science. I think that the study that you did related to witness confidence, numerics versus verbal but graded, that is very interesting. I'm wondering if you have any way of measuring the reliability of their level of confidence with numerics and verbal and graded responses, but also the data that when you share, that I can see a lot of the standard deviation or standard error kind of duplicates or, from the responses. And if you have any approach to identify the optimal categorizations of your verbal responses, I just wanted to give you.
Yeah, so sorry if the PowerPoint, maybe I should have used some different colors to get those standard deviation bars to come through better. Not from this data, but I may have some other data that answers your question, not for graded verbal in particular, but In a different project, I had participants report their confidence in their own words, and then they themselves translated that to a number. So I'm pretty confident, and that's a 7 out of 10. And then we also had independent evaluators read the confidence statement and then scale that. So we were able to compare verbal confidence, independent assessments of it compared to witnesses' own translation of their words to numbers. Turns out that training people to consistently evaluate verbal confidence is also very difficult. We ended up being able to get some consistency, but that allowed us to sort of show the relationship between how outside observers perceive it and how people themselves translate it. And there's usually a pretty good relationship such that, you know, you can train people to assess these confidence statements in a consistent way, in the same way that people themselves translate their verbal confidence.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Before we conclude, we have a questionnaire, so you can find it in the chat box, and please do this. It will help us to know how we are doing, so please do the questionnaire. You can find it in the chat box. Thank you very much, Dr. Greenspan, for presenting today. We enjoyed a lot, and we look forward to know even more about your study in the future.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, everyone.